Good afternoon. You are watching the Unleashing India Global Web Summit series. I am Akram Haq, the editor of the Policy Times. Policy Times, as a development media promoting development journalism and policy advocacy, has been coming up with a series of programs. Among them, Unleashing India Global Web Summit series is such elite and very unique in its own approach and way because of the guests that we have in this program and the topics that we have picked, chaired by Dr. P. Shekhar, who himself is a development advocate and has been promoting nation building exercises and activities since his early career. Now, the objective of this program that we have today and the guest we have is to understand how to align the global growth strategy of a beautiful nation like India at a very important juncture when the country and the whole world has been suffering from COVID-19 crisis and most of the economic activities are relatively down, not only in India but any part of the world. And now we need to pick it up not only to rebalance the economic growth but also to boost it to such a level that it becomes sustainable and absorb the manpower or employment that we need to create, the entrepreneurship or innovation that we need to bring in, and to give the kind of energy that we need to give the global leadership angle. Because the moment you aim to be a global leader, you need to also give a good amount of energy and investment in the direction so that you become a global leader. Now, here, the international fund and fundraising has a tremendous role to play. This fundraising, I will not go into details because we have the experts to actually share views on that. But I understand from three different perspectives. We saw in last 10 years, there has been huge influx of funds in Indian startup ecosystem. So there are three category I find. One is a startup and innovation ecosystem. The second is main public infrastructure projects, for example, rural development, the experts, water issues, irrigation projects. So there are many projects where international organizations like ADB, Asian Development Bank, World Bank, United Nations, they put funds, or vaccination or healthcare improvement projects and all. The third is a massive infrastructure need that we have. So we need around $13 trillion of kind of $17 trillion kind of investment in the infrastructure alone, which is itself is a huge domain, bigger than many countries together. So how do we raise funds for the startup and entrepreneurship ecosystem? How do we raise funds for the public projects, public social projects, and their infrastructure? Would be very interesting to know that we have planned today. With this, I will not go further. But since last 10 years, we have seen huge influx of funds from China. How do we diversify that? Would be a very interesting thing to see. And our Prime Minister recently have highlighted that we are diversifying to other countries to attract foreign funds. So with this, I want to request Dr. P. Shekhar to give a background note and take the session forward. And then I'll be very interested to see how we raise international funds for nation building. Dr. Shekhar, over to you.
Thank you, Akram. Technically, today is the 31st session. 81st session. We started this in end of May, and without a break, every week, twice we are coming. And every topic has been on the reincarnation. We call it reincarnation because we believe that COVID is like a World War III. And like any world war, it has destroyed economy from various angles. And in that destruction, it has taken few lives, but it has taken away the confidence which we require. And that needs to be built up as we go. So in the usual way, I'm going to rush through a small presentation. That is only to give a broad overview of the topic. The topic today is global economic strategy with international fund support system and for national reincarnation. As I said, national reincarnation we are talking because we have been hit badly. We means the whole world, not only India. My first slide is generally about India. First two slides about India and COVID. Now, India, as we know, this I'm only re-emphasizing that it's a very complex country. Again, as a country, when we know that it is a 206 countries put together is one India. and it has got all the languages, all the religions, all sorts of complex, culture. But we are one country. We are bound by the Indianness of the, way we are, and it's a 10,000-year-old civilization, which was brought to the knees by uh, uh, invaders, and today we are growing back into to become a global leader. Already we have come from the end of the line to almost we are the sixth in the whole world map of development. So there are a lot of other facts and figures which I will not go through. And same way, this COVID is something which I would like to spend half a minute, because COVID is something which is very invisible, which is very, very, something which nobody has even understood, but it has successfully built. It is like World War III without knowing which is the enemy. World War III, where we know that the enemy is just invisible, invisible. We don't know whether it's a worm or a germ or a whatever. Anyway, now we have got vaccine, which is bringing us at least psychologically back into the game, because 0.8% of the Indians is totally affected by COVID. Out of 0.8%, 98% have already recovered, and still it has successfully brought the economy down. It has brought our confidence down. Now, let us start moving independent of COVID. We have to take advantage of the attack by COVID, and we have to see that we are back, and we are back in the reckoning, because the whole world is looking at India as a leadership country. The whole world, one thing good COVID has done is, we were all thinking our health system is bad, our education system is bad, and we are this thing, we are the thing, and everything has been brought to the knees. Now, today we are highly respected in the world. We are the ones who are supplying vaccines to the world. We are the ones who are confidently taking care. Our own Indians, 25 million Indians who are overseas Indians, are the people who are always in the front of various countries. They are also leaders in various countries. That is independent of COVID. But COVID has brought these to the highest, prominent throughout the world. Now, next many of the slides, I'll just write only the title and not the contents. Global trade on a sectoral level is very, very enchanting to see, because here there are various ways in which we have to analyze the money which comes to various sectors, money from where it comes, how it is used, how each slide could be a separate session, and each has to be analyzed. And the summary of these, our experts will be there to tell in a proper, understandable, and practical way. Now, there are various organizations called World Bank, IMF. They also have huge funds to be, distributed to developing countries. And India is in between. India is considered a developing country, but we all know that we are a highly developed country, even though on a GDP, and GDP is not the only way to look at the country, because we have to look at the complexity when we compare GDPs. And many of the thing which the way I look at it is we have to combine GDP with the happiness index. And in both these things, another small sad point is the way the people rate is not practical. So we are always brought, even though we supply some of the best people in the whole world, our all education system will be, in rating wise low. We do not know why, because they are the people who rule the world, but we are told everything we are this thing. So that also I'm sure will improve as we go down the line. And infrastructure investment and job creation is something which none of us can avoid, because the perception, the way the people want the world to be, they are all quite different. A person even sitting in the village, because of the spread of media, his expectations of the world is very high. So it is up to us to give what they really want. And for that, infrastructure has to be high. Job creation has to be highest. India produces 20 million new Indians every year. That means every year for 20 million Indians who are born 20, 25 years back, we need to provide them a job. We cannot just simply go away from our responsibility. So for that also, we need various strategy, various ways in which, and many of our sessions have, brought some practical ways in which these gaps can be filled. They can be brought in. But fund coming from abroad, fund coming from within the resources in terms of people's contribution, we have to take it. We have to find proper ways of taking it. Here, of course, government and others have to make rules by which people feel it safe, people feel it easy, and people feel it good to, invest and take back. And that is, of course, a government phenomenon. People like others can only take it to you can take horse to the pond, so horse has to drink it. So same way, the funds are there. We have the funds is the horse. We just to take to the pond, and the government and the people in India have to take it. Nowadays, of course, with the openness with so many Indians abroad, they themselves are investing. They themselves are coming in picture, and so we are on. We will slowly get into a win-win situation in which people would this. So in all this thing, when funds are coming, we need a foolproof system. This foolproof system comes from the system which is called secured governance. Secured governance is a self-sustained economic doctrine in which, because of valuation, if the funding is planned through the valuation, the fund will 100% be not lost on the way. Okay, so there, the whole untapped, harnessing untapped potential for nation, defining growth through convergence of multiple sectors, development with minimal government investment, which is what is required. Anyway, government does not have money to invest, and setting up mini hubs, nano hubs nationally. So in this secure governance model, the fund is absolutely safe and secure, and it will go in its own way after giving the country the development which is required. In all this thing, of course, I have written a large number of books, about 100 books I have written on various sectors, various states, various economies, various models and all, which gives us. Now, cutting my presentation, let me talk about today's two very, very eminent speakers of a different grade they are, and also they are achievers in their own right. One is Mr. Dinesh Dhume. He is a reputed international banker, and he has been associated with all parts of the world with many of the largest consulting firms, E&Y, KPMG type companies, and he has been involved in larger projects, and he is also a mentor to many companies. That means he's not only the consultant, they only advise. He has his hands in actual ground in running, helping the thing. People would find his talk and his way of, getting many sick companies he has revived. Any other thing, if you can give us an example, we would fully welcome. And then Mr. V.K. Mishra, he is a doyen of industry. He is first generation entrepreneur. He has been he has got family education trust, which they do, but which he has not been actively involved, because he wants to be an adventurous entrepreneur. And so he has built a name for himself in terms of many global enterprises. He's chairman of a global technology network, and he's a mentor, and he's also an evangelist for industrial growth with lot of connections from various countries, and connecting India to the world. Both are now stationed in India. They were Dinesh especially, was much of his time he was abroad. Now he is back in India, and from India they are controlling the world. So with that, I'll request Dinesh to give the first few minutes. Please feel free to talk about yourself. You talk for 5-10 minutes. Then Mishra will come, because both of you, I know you're not giving a presentation, and then we get back to you in terms of post-COVID, and finally we talk of the national reincarnation on the various strategies. Thank you, Mr. Dinesh, please.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shekhar, for your kind words of my introduction. You've been really generous, I must say, in your introduction. About myself, I'm a chartered accountant and an investment banker. Spent about 25 years in the Middle East, in Gulf, doing transactions globally, mergers, acquisitions. Have done transactions in Europe, US, Malaysia, India, Middle East, North Africa, transactions ranging from probably 500 million to $2 to $3 billion. Various different sectors. We were the acquirers of Aston Martin, Grosvenor House apartment hotel in London, a yacht manufacturing company in Middle East, and so many other sectors, hotels, hospitals, and various things. I came back to India 3 years back, spearheading car leasing and mobility solution business along with co-founders, where I have foreign shareholders from Saudi and Bahrain who we brought in to invest into India with us. Talking of the subject matter now, I think the headline is COVID, post-COVID devastation, and then about the fund investment. I think going forward, earlier we used to know the world as BC and AD, before Christ and after death. Probably 10 to 15 years down the line, the world will be known as BC and AC, before Corona and after Corona. That's the kind of Corona has had impact on the global world stage or global economy. It's not the first pandemic, and it's certainly not the most deadliest. We have had the Black Death, or also called as bubonic plague, in 14th century, which probably had almost 20 million people died in Europe. Or we have had Spanish flu a century back, which probably 500 million people were affected and almost 35 to 40 million deaths. In that perspective, COVID today, we are at about 117 million infected, 66 million have recovered, and only about 2.5 million dead. Of course, the world economy, which was totally the GDP, world GDP was at about $87 trillion. In the first 2 quarters, the GDP was down by almost 15 trillion from whatever it was at 87 trillion, down by 15 trillion. Most economies, whether US, 31% down in first quarter, India 23% down. Similarly, most economies were down by that. Of course, in last 2 quarters, it has started to come back to some sensibility, back to at least, if not high growth rate, no negative growth rates. And going forward, next year, India is projected to grow at almost 12%, 11 to 12%. Another impact of COVID has been almost 400 million loss of jobs. That's the ILO prediction. Loss of jobs of 400 million, with the impact of almost the revenue loss of salary 3.5 trillion worldwide. IMF has estimated that the global GDP would be down in 2020 by roughly 5.5 to 4.5%. And of course, for next year, they're projecting 2 to 3% growth rate as a global economy, with India growing at 12%. Most other European economies, the reduction in GDP was even higher. Italy, UK, Germany, Spain would be down to 6 to 8% GDP negative growth rate in 2020. Most economies, as you would all know, would have stimulus packages. India has had about 10% of its GDP, US 13% of its GDP. Japan has almost 22% of its GDP as a stimulus package. So as to bring back the economies back on its feet, grow from here on, I think we have to somewhere eventually forget 2020 as 1 year of a blip in a lifespan of 80 to 100 years kind of thing. And we have to look forward to see how we move forward from here, rather than thinking about for how long this is going to continue to affect us. The other impact is there is a lot of inequality that is growing from whatever has happened. Inequality has been there always, but if you look at the data, 651 billionaires have grown their wealth by 30%, even in 2020, and grown to $4 trillion, while almost 400 million people have lost their jobs. So there is some sort of inequality. Past 4 decades has been of urbanization and globalization. The global trade increased from about 40% of world GDP to 65% of world GDP in the last 4 decades. We have been talking about the world as a one global village because of what has been happening, global trade, people moving easily, we have the connectivity and so many things. However, post-COVID, there is going to be some kind of an impact for 2 reasons. Of course, the impact cannot be that damaging because global trade cannot come to a standstill. Countries will have to depend upon each other. US will export cars, farming to China. China will export a lot of the electronics and various other products to the world. India is exporting services and other things. So world trade cannot come to a standstill. Vietnam, Bangladesh is exporting a lot of clothes and all of that. At the same time, given what happened due to COVID, the supply chain management sort of was drastically affected. Most countries, or why countries, even within countries, most even cities are going to start looking at to see how they will have a self-sufficiency to some degree, so that if at all there's any repeat of some kind of a pandemic in future, they're having at least something that supply chain continues to some degree rather than overly dependent on the world supply chain. India has been attracting a lot of foreign investment over the last couple of years, thanks to our government, fantastic performance, stability, full majority government. Last year itself, we attracted almost 60 billion, even in the most difficult year, 2020, we attracted a very good foreign direct investment. And before that, we had attracted 47 billion in 2019. This is thanks to various things: stable government, very good potential. India is looked upon as the elephant, which had probably underperformed for quite some time, but has the potential to perform much better. We are talked about to possibly we were the fifth largest economy. Last year we went down to 6 again because of COVID, but before COVID we were the fifth largest economy in purchasing power, parity times, even above UK. However, why is the foreign direct the investment going to come into India more and more? Look at the policies. Even today, there was an announcement about further easing of the rules for the managing the businesses, ease of doing business has been further eased today. There has been some announcement from the government in that respect. We have a thriving sectors. We have a population which is we call our population is our advantage, which probably 20 years back we used to call it as a disadvantage, but now it's an advantage that we look upon. The demographics, the whole reason being most of the population is in the age bracket, which is earning, spending, and that's where they have the spending power to buy foreign goods, and that's where all the influx of a lot of foreign goods are coming into India. Today, again, one more thing is about the vaccine diplomacy. And going forward, today, Gita Gopinath, the IMF chief economist, said India stands out in its vaccine policy. India is not only helping its own population, but India is also supplying to some of its neighboring countries free of cost vaccination. Of course, this is somewhere going to come to help in future, because I believe nothing is free in this world. There's always a give and take. And commerce, again, is a give and take. Business is a two-way street. It's not a one-way traffic. And which is very important when you're negotiating in world trade, how each of them, I think it's important that we have a balanced, equitable growth going forward. It can't be that a country is growing at the cost of other countries, or even a individual is growing at the cost of other individuals within a country as well. So balanced, equitable growth is very, very important. Most of the Indian startups have coming to the startup, and one of the things why it will attract more capital, there is already a well established performance base over the last few years, whether it is Flipkart, whether it is Zomato, whether it is Ola. Most of them have done fantastic, have attracted great capital and will continue to attract capital. And going from there, a lot of Indian entrepreneurs who are well experienced, who have got good exposure, good mindset, and with the ease of doing business and maybe more policies coming towards dual shares, where dual voting shares and all of that, it will only encourage further the entrepreneurs to take more risk and set up more businesses, which will only attract more capital. The infrastructure, of course, also is a main thing which Dr. Shekhar has already said, needs about $4.5 trillion of investment in the Indian infrastructure, out of which probably we have 3 trillion or so, but the balance is somewhere we have to see where to come from. And given that it will give good returns despite the currency fluctuation or the currency loss, factoring that also, it will still able to give good returns, and that is what will continue to attract foreign investors into India and only increase from here on. A small country like Singapore attracts about $110 billion of foreign direct investment. There's no reason why India cannot take it from 60 billion currently to maybe 150 to $200 billion over next 3 to 5 years. We have the dream, the Prime Minister has the dream of taking India to $5 trillion economy from where it stands today. We were at $2.7 trillion before COVID, probably post-COVID, we are at $2.4 trillion. But still, I think he's not given up on the dream for $5 trillion, and he's finding ways to see how we can take it forward. One more thing is most international organizations, whether IMF, World Bank, ADB, ILO, have World Health Organization has a lot of role to play going forward, a larger role. It's not that they're not playing the role, but they'll have a larger role to play in sort of ensuring that there's a balanced growth worldwide. Of course, there cannot be total equality in everybody. Our 5 fingers are not the same. So they can't be totally same equality, but at the same time, we have to find a mechanism where it is balanced, equitable, where all stakeholders come out at least happy, pleasurable out of that growth, rather than one segment feeling that it is at our cost that is happening, because that will only lead to social problems if that was the case. The biggest opportunity out of crisis is always an opportunity as well. And those companies which are sitting on cash flow can look for M&A, because you acquire best companies during the bad times because you acquire them cheap, because you'll be able to acquire them cheap. I think that's where I will end my discussion for right now, and I'll leave the floor open to Mr. Mishra, and then I'm open to then question and answer later on. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dinesh. Yes, second phase will be very, very important. And Mr. Mishra, of course, there is a huge expectations from what things, because you are again a man on the ground. You are again a man with multiple countries experience you got. Of course, the country you deal much more is China, but China is also gone down and coming up again. How much of China portion will come into its old form, I do not know. So yeah, and you also have a huge role in many of the large associations. So Mishra ji, you can give your views. Starting from, of course, my request is something personal. What is your personal growth story?
Thank you, Dr. Shekhar. It is really a very good afternoon to everyone. And especially my thanks to the organizers who are taking pain to organize these cloud meetings and making the talks relevant by involving so many experts. So really, this is a good experience. I have participated in past your events, and I have listened to activities, and it's a really very learning process which you have initiated, especially Dr. Shekhar's efforts. As you have already told so much about me, it looks not very great to talk about yourself. But if you are talking to students or something, it looks fine. But when you talk to the various qualified audience, it looks very pity to talk what you have achieved. But still, whatever I have learned in past my journey of entrepreneurship and my consulting and my social experiences in past 3.5 decades, it is very important that where I stand today, and I can call myself as a first generation entrepreneur, rather than calling me as a law graduate or chartered accountant or science graduation, which I have done as an education. But yes, entrepreneurship is ultimate, achievement, which I can say it's giving me a good satisfaction. And after having entrepreneurship experience with the way people have involved me in the various platforms like Chamber of Commerce's, be it a PhD Chamber of Commerce, where I keep learning a lot of things from the senior industrialists, from the MSME enterprises, and from the micro and startup kind of enterprises. So these are the journey of learning. And similarly, the international organizations, so where I have learned a lot by serving them as a consulting advisory, or where I hold some positions. Holding position is not very great thing. Basically, how you involve yourself, how you contribute in that organization, that is very important. As you see, currently I'm having this banner of Global Technology Network. This idea came out of all my working and association with the various Chamber of Commerces, in which I'm involved since the last 2 decades. Be it a national Chamber of Commerces or it's a bilateral Chamber of Commerces. Like, as you all know, I'm quite active in bilateral India-China activity, which is a very, very niche experience in my life after having so many experiences with the West world and with the countries like Middle East. But apart from engaging in a Chamber of Commerce, once you see the growth and development of the surrounding part, then you see the importance of technology. And when technology comes, sometimes it may not be understandable by a common man. It may not be understandable by even a businessman who can be very smart. But technology keep playing its role, and you cannot ignore it. So currently, I find it's a very great satisfaction in terms of technology, that technology is used by a common man. Be it a normal telephone, a smartphone, or some kind of app he is using for his day-to-day life, making life easy, or while traveling on the road. Best example I keep giving to the government officials also, the fast tag which has been introduced by government of India for the highways toll payment. This is the best example of adoption of technology by a common man. Even a truck driver who is not formally literate, he is adopting that technology seamlessly, and he feels very happy while using that technology. So we cannot ignore the role of technology. That's why I have promoted technology cooperation. Not much, because I am not a scientist, so I cannot talk about deep research, but I can talk about technology cooperation. So since last 5 6 years, when we have started technology cooperation with the South Asia and East Asia, especially with China, then I have closely watched the development of China technology cooperation with rest of the world, and how they have adopted those technologies. Uh, Earlier, they might have started with photocopy of technologies or copycat kind of situation, but lately they have started adopting technologies in a proper way. And now, as all we know, the patent registration is one of the highest in our neighboring country. That is a good learning for us and good learning for rest of the world, how things can transform with the help of technology. So coming back to my involvement in the technology as a India China Technology Transfer Center, that has given me idea why India cannot involve other developed countries for technology cooperation just for business. I'm not talking about deep technologies. I'm not talking about the technology transfer like which we do in automobile sector or pharmaceutical sector. Here I'm talking about general cooperation of technology. That's why you see this global technology network, which I'm proud to head, and it is having a lot of initiatives, and we are currently cooperating with 16 countries. These are highly developed countries as well as newly developed countries like China. So US and Scandinavia countries, Japan is giving me idea to how to make the life easy for a common man, and by using it purely for the business. So this GTN stands for Global Technology Network, to use the technologies to make your business efficient, relevant, and sustainable. So with this, I will tell little about my experience with social organization also. What happened in 2009, one of my friend has forced me to participate in the forthcoming event, which was the great event of sports in India in 2010 and as a Commonwealth Games. So I was not very great player of any particular area, but still they have encouraged me to come as a sports management person, and you try to put whatever expertise you have in that. So the learning of Commonwealth Games in 2010 has given me really a great learning, which I still use for my connectivity with the sports activity and sports event and in the sports management. Many small and big activities and events of a sports area keep asking me to help them and to make them connect with the CSR money or with the corporate sponsorship and those kind of things. So there I have acted as a vice chairman of CWG committee on revenue and sponsorship. And that was the real great international learning for me, where I have seen how Australians and UK people are really taking good advantage of this Commonwealth platform by involving so many countries who are participating as a Commonwealth Games participant, and making it as a business opportunity also. Because once you organize a Commonwealth Games, you develop a lot of infrastructure, you develop a lot of sports infrastructure, and then you make a lot of temporary arrangement to make the event possible. All this is a big game. And when I have learned about Commonwealth Business Club, then I found this is one of the most vibrant trade platform in the Commonwealth countries. And we should learn and we should keep learning with all these platforms and activities and these events. So my involvement with hardcore CSR programs, like I'm on the board of one very famous religious place called Mathura Vrindavan. So in a Braj Trust, I'm the trustee. And there also I keep learning various aspects of life of not only Indian, rather in a larger way for the human being. How every aspect of life is really connected with these kind of religious places, with the activities of these places. So by this way, wherever I'm involved, like in educational institution, Dr. Shekhar has told, my family legacy was there in family educational institutions. There I have tried to connect with the most modern institutions also, like Amity University, where I am proud to be on the board, advisory board. There also I have learned so much that how a private sector can really contribute to the traditionally government-backed or government-supported sector. And this become one of the large university. So all these learnings, which I keep getting with these involvement of various organizations and institutions, these keep paying me as a more expert and more wise my thoughts, which I certainly apply for my business also and for society at large. Now coming back to our interesting topic of today's, where a lot of things have already talked, and sometimes it feels little bored also, like talking about COVID and COVID situation. I take it as one of the great event which has happened in our lifetime. I have not seen any pandemic before, and I pray to God I should not see any pandemic in my lifetime. So, with this pandemic experience, which has just started in my fancy country, because the Indochina was the very fancy in my life, because I do a lot of business with China, and I'm heading this Indochina chamber. So I thought this will be over and this can be controlled. How pandemic gives you an experience. This is also a lifetime learning. No university, no government policy, no act, law can taught you how to handle these kind of situations. Everyone has innovated his own way, how to continue your regular life in lockdown, how to continue your business during the lockdown, how to compromise your eating habits, and how to compromise your basic entertainment or luxury travel or whatever you do in your regular life. My kind of person who used to travel every week, I forget my traveling. 1.5 years is already coming where we are not doing traveling except one or two incidental, just careful travels. So the most affected part is our personal life. And then we can talk about so many areas of business and so many areas who got affected. We feel pity about the people who got affected with this and they couldn't survive. That's the most negative, drastic aspect of this COVID, which we can never forget. So many of our dear friends and dears have lost their life, which they were not supposed to do. So the health aspect and the health challenges, countries like best in the world for the health facilities also got a challenge of lifetime, either it's a European country or a US. So learning is going on in a big way, knowingly or unknowingly. This cloud meeting, I think more or less for most of the people, it was also a new experience, which is gift of COVID. So we need to be positive about this COVID event, and we need to take it as a biggest learning event of our life. how my view goes about the policies and the struggle and the success governments are doing with this COVID environment. I must give a great thumbs up to our Indian government. I find this was the best management of COVID in the world. This is the best example. I cannot compare this example with any other country. So whatever management has been done by Indian government, I will share one very small, on a lighter note. In Delhi, there is a headquarter of this National Disaster Management. When this building has been made and this act has been derived, because we move in the policy making circle a lot of people were making joke kind of thing that what this building is doing since last so many years, NDMA, and what so many people do inside this building. साल में एक बार बाढ़ आता है, कहीं कहीं पे कुछ सूखा आता है, otherwise they don't have work. But this NDMA structure which Indian government has created, whatever governments have contributed, I will not go about any particular government, but this structure has given us strength and platform to fight with this COVID kind of pandemic. And we must compliment the policymakers for these kind of far sight and visionary policies, where they have made provisions of all those things which they have encountered. Almost, if you see Home Ministry notifications during this COVID lockdown, you will surprise in the post-independence, so many notifications have not been issued, which they have issued in several months. So, kind of activity the government was doing this COVID, we were sitting at home, we were not going even outside our house, but the government was fully active. Trains were not moving, flights were not moving, nothing was moving on the road, but government was moving. That I think is the biggest surprise. We should thanks to the technologies and the will and wish of the governments. The same situation was in every country. So this COVID-19 pandemic, which is the rule-based international system which we were operating, which we had brought decades of peace, prosperity, and freedom to the world, was under strain. And threats from revisionist great powers, unrest within democracies, place great pressure on the system. These threats remain, but the virus has added a massive strategic shock. The COVID-19 pandemic is arguably the greatest disruption to the global order since World War II, and could upend an already well-guarded international system. The effect of pandemic and mitigation measures have overwhelmed global health system, keeping up 90% of students out of school and shutting down businesses and factories. The prospect of global recovery from economic devastation of the pandemic had been really a fantasy. The crisis exposed weaknesses in economies, at the same time, weaknesses of the governments, societies, with developed countries as well as for underdeveloping countries. Especially for developing countries, this devastation was more and having more and bigger degree. Similarly, the collapse of so many things which were not having any alternates, and the new debt crisis, income and lack of sovereign debt, restructuring frameworks, or inadequate legal processes. So many of these international happenings have given a really opening of your mind, how to handle these things. So here I will quote some World Bank President David's statement. The quote, scope and speed with which the COVID-19 pandemic and economic shutdowns have devastated the poor around the world are unprecedented in modern times. Current estimates show that 16 million people could be pushed into extreme poverty in 2020, and these estimates are likely to rise further with the reopening of advanced economies, the primary detrimental. Unquote. So this statement says everything. What has happened in last year, what is going to happen during this year also. This year also is the recovery year, so we can't expect too much during this year. But when developing countries are already struggling with mobilizing sufficient resources to fight with the pandemic and to achieve certain kind of goals, even the situation was not very good before pandemic also. By 2019, a number of such countries have unsustainable debt, burden levels, making further borrowings, health-related social issues. All those problems were already there even before pandemic. Now, if we add the pandemic, you can imagine how serious many of these countries are really struggling. So I will take a pause and stop here to have this format of this program. And in my next chance, I will speak about the policies and the real topic, how reincarnation is possible in India. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mishra. Now coming to Dinesh, he did an excellent, coining of the word BCS, before COVID. Okay, maybe a real reshuffle will take place as BC. Now let us go to AC from Dinesh definition. That means after COVID. So after COVID, of course, for me, after COVID is after last year, April. Okay. So we don't believe COVID is going to anywhere disappear. COVID is something which has come, which will be there permanently. Now with this vaccine having come, like any other deaths, every year we'll have some extra number of deaths for COVID, but at least the fear should not be there. Last year it was the fear and the frenzy, which is really bad. Okay. So that being the case, AC after COVID in the Dinesh definition, let me have a 5-minute, perception of how we as humans will, under this sector, how we can get the confidence to the public at large. Public at large is seeing at people like us to give them the solution, which we should not let them down, because they are it is the people like us who have to, give the confidence and take initiatives, see that something is felt on the ground. And I would like you to please see, and then Vivek, Mr. Mishra can at the same time. Mr. Dinesh.
Okay, thank you. So from BC to AC, we have to try and see from the sweltering heat, how do we get into AC, the air conditioning thing, post-COVID. Although when I see some of what's happening in the world, and when I see the stock market's frenzy, and with the retail investors coming into the stock market a lot more after post-COVID, maybe because they have more time at their hand sitting at home. When I look at the stock market, I don't think we really need to probably provide any more confidence to the public at large. They have a lot more confidence in the whole world economy and the Indian economy, and which is why the stock markets are where they are. I mean, the stock markets, not only India, all world stock markets are probably at their highest peak ever, kind of thing. So the confidence is probably back of the public. 2-3 things. Obviously, now we have the vaccine. Although, yes, vaccine doesn't mean that we should start just assuming and relax and start not adhering. Guarantee 100%, although it probably reduces the potential of getting COVID to some degree. World as an economy is bouncing back. In fact, the last quarter, the growth was higher than what it was the previous year's last quarter in terms of the world trade. World trade increased 4% on a quarterly basis in the fourth quarter of last year, which was which was more than what it was last year. So it is sort of telling us somewhere that people have started to assume to live with COVID and not let it probably overplay your mind anymore and just be that we keep everything under lockdown. Yes, there were some sporadic lockdowns being talked about globally in various countries because there was second wave coming, cases were increasing. Probably that is happening in India currently as well, especially some of the states. But maybe these are some sporadic events and this is not going to long lasting. And given that vaccine is there, people will feel a lot more confident to go out and conduct their business as usual. Of course, now the new norm, as they say, but yes, the new norm will allow us to function, carry on our day-to-day activities. It's no longer that people will say, will sit at home or work from home. Although some industries and some corporates are talking of work from home, maybe for 60 to 70% of the staff going forward as well, because they're in the nature of business which allows them to work from home. It's not necessary that all businesses will have that luxury of work from home. Manufacturing, people have to go on the shop floor and do the manufacturing. They can't sit at home and remotely manufacture something through robot. But yes, IT and some of the other industries, we have that luxury of working from home. This will certainly have impacts on how we grow from here on. Earlier, I talked about balanced, equitable growth. And that is where Dr. Shekhar's idea of sustainable growth is very important. I'm not saying that because of COVID, we should stop global trade, we should stop globalization, we should stop urbanization. This particular COVID may not necessarily be due to urbanization, but due to urbanization, we have had other challenges like climate change, global warming, and so many things. And there will be certain negative impacts of industrialization agriculture. You just eat what you grow, or you just eat what you take out of the water, that is the fish. You have to do trade, because if we continue to live in like a stone age, then obviously poverty will continue to rise from here on again. In last few years, most governments had done fantastic in managing the poverty, bringing it below poverty line. Most of the population, India has managed it as well, fantastic. But if we continue to stop doing global business or stop industrialization, stop being development oriented, then poverty will increase. So we have to find a mechanism where development and environment is both balanced, which is where again and again Dr. Shekhar's idea of secure governance is extremely important, and which where there's very minimal investment required from the government. Government doesn't have to invest. The investment will come from the investor community. There's a new thing nowadays talked about called the SPAC, which is the special purpose acquisition companies, which is becoming mushrooming, where you create a special purpose acquisition company, you raise capital there, and then through that, you invest into various things. So even some of the startups in India like Zomato and all is exploring listing through SPAC rather than listing it in India and or directly on NASDAQ kind of as a company. Other than that, I don't see, I mean, as I've said, I repeat, maybe at the cost of repeating, it is balanced, equitable growth, which has to be where we take care of our environment, we take care of people, at the same time, we grow in a way where it doesn't destroy the environment to a large extent. And I pray, as Mishra said, that hope we don't see another pandemic in our lifetime. It's not that a pandemic will never happen. There may be some other pandemic which we may not be ready for can happen. In fact, Bill Gates had said 5 years back when Ebola had happened, he had a presentation on the Tech Talk where he had expressed his worry that we may see some pandemic and more people can die out of that than in any nuclear or any world war kind of thing. And we don't want that to happen, certainly not in our lifetime, not for our next generations as well. But that is only
Okay, thank you, Dinesh. Yeah. Now, Mr. Mishra, now coming, you had, of course, described COVID also as like a event, maybe celebration may not be the right word, maybe something in which, something has hit us and, we have to go out with it. So now post COVID, we are all optimists, we are all down to earth people, we all would like to have something good. And we would like to see, like he said, the stock market is one of the barometers, one of the indicators of progress. It is growing well, which means everybody is not taking it as serious as the way things economically things are going down. So you, as a person who is representing a lot of industries, lot of industry associations, and being an entrepreneur yourself, being a mentor, how would you look? Maybe another about few minutes, you can give your final comments, please.
You asked very appropriate question. How stock markets are performing in this situation. I will go back about our topic of reincarnation and rebuilding. So what has most of the governments in the world, rather all the governments in the world have taken the policy route to reincarnate every country, respective countries. And in this policy, most of the governments have decided to reignite the growth by announcing stimulus measures. Like India has also announced 20 lakh crore package in terms of reincarnating so many projects and making a lot of infrastructure, ports development, this and that. And many governments have decided to go give money directly to the people. Indian government has also tried its bit with the limited resources to give the money in the hands of the people, be it a farmers or be it a poor people, whatever way. And our scheme of covering 80 crore people for the food for several months, free food, almost free food for such a large population has never seen in the world, and successfully distributing. So that has also given a challenge of logistic support, which government has created with the help of public-private partnership. So these policy interventions, but before talking about directly to the money aspect, I would like to bring in the September 2015, the resolution passed by United Nations for the Sustainable Goals. As we were talking about the poverty and equality, it is very important to understand those goals. Developing countries were already feeling challenges to achieve the poverty goal and by 2030, including India. So our neighbor country has just after pandemic has declared, China has declared last week that China is now free from poverty and they have already achieved the Sustainable Goal 1 of United Nations. So that is giving us a kind of challenge. Whatever share market is saying, whatever our perception, share market is a perception. It talks about the industry perception, which is no doubt is very, very positive about India. And I'm also very positive about the India story. Whatever we see today, this will be the history if you will see after horizon of 2 to 5 years. This kind of share index, you will find it double or whatever may be a big number. That will not be surprise for India's story. That is one thing. Another, the development goal of number 5, which achieve the gender equality and empower all women and girls. India has successfully done a lot of achievement in that. It may not look as an ultimate leadership sharing in the political parties by women equality, but at many levels, I can see the Beti Bachao kind of slogans which has been given by government, various state governments and India government, that has given the result. Result is coming in terms of better ratio, result is coming in terms of better participation of females, not only in education and in the working sector also. So what happens when we achieve the inequalities in all aspects of life, including the business and our day-to-day life? This gives the real growth potential as a more confidence and a more solid ground for the development and for the rebuilding of any country. So our focus should not be shifted from these basic goals where inequalities, any kind of inequality has to be met by all means. And we should not hesitate while taking some kind of daring steps also by providing some kind of measures like reservation or any those kind of things also. But we should achieve inequality and we should stand on firm ground once your नींव मजबूत होगी तो बिल्डिंग इमारत बुलंद होगी. तो हमारी नींव मजबूत हो रही है, जो भी गवर्नमेंट ये सस्टेनेबल गोल्स पे काम कर रही है, और ये हमारा जो इंडिकेटर है शेयर मार्केट या हमारी कमोडिटी मार्केट, ये इंडिकेटर is going in right direction. It is directly in proportional to the policies which we are making. And this 20 lakh crore package of Atmanirbhar Bharat, which has come up during this COVID pandemic time itself. And the best part of this package, the PLI scheme, which is going to change the scenario of Indian manufacturing industry. It has given a new life and new lease of life to all the industries, either call it textile industry or any other industry. They will get a lot of support through this PLI scheme. And I'm sure I can watch all the industry people are very excited. Be it a pharmaceutical, phase 1 is already over. Now phase 2 is unveiled by Government of India for the PLI scheme. Similarly, in the textile sector, PLI scheme is there. So people are taking advantage of that. And in industry, the MSME industry especially is very bullish, and they are very positive about the environment. Although they have suffered a lot in past 4 or 5 years due to various events, but still they are encouraged to take the leapfrog kind of situation in this current policy, which has been advised by the Government of India. Again, I will come back to the role of technologies in all these aspects. Be it a ease of doing business, be it a distribution of food for poor, be it any kind of equality scheme of Government of India, that cannot have success unless we involve the technologies to disseminate it properly. I would like to give a very small example on instance here, where in the pre-COVID scenario, when we were having a trade war was going on between US, China, between US and India, and everyone was trying to have a tit for tat kind of situation. Now you can see what happened to that. If you will talk about inequalities, if you talk about in the extreme irrational way, even globe cannot survive. So now everyone is talking about the new rational policies between the global trade also. So these are the good signs. Similarly, a small example of FDI in India. During the peak period of COVID, we got $80 billion investment when everyone was sitting at home. So these are the best examples when you have a potential, when you have a courage, and when you have a मुसीबत में भी अपने को चमकते हुए दिखार के निकल आना. So those kind of कहावतें जो इंडिया में बहुत फेमस थी, वो सभी फिट हो रही हैं. So everything is going in a right direction. Our motto should be very clear that I will quote here Mahatma Gandhi used to tell to all industrialists during the independence time that you are a trustee of your business. You should not take it as your personal achievement or personal development. If we adopt that approach of Mahatma Gandhi, again, nobody can stop our country, India or Bharat, to sign further. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So with that, with a small closing remark, we'll close it. Now, the fact that, something has attacked, and with the positive way in which both the speakers today are saying that certain things are there, which is indicative that something good, even during bad times, something good has happened. And that will, of course, consolidate with time. And second is the way Mishra ji said that, the approach of the human being, approach of the government, approach of the credible way in which we have got a good name internationally. That is something which is the biggest result of COVID. Nobody respected India as much as it is respecting today in any form. Even in IT, we did not get that type of respect which pharma has brought. Even though I was responsible for bringing IT into the forefront, still pharma has brought us the name, pharma has brought us the thing, and IT and others will now complement and will go in a good way. And in all this thing, of course, we should not forget that we can live only with other countries' involvement. Funding does not mean somebody is giving anything in charity. They are giving money because they are going to, money is safe in India, money will grow in India, and money will be good for them to keep in India. Others in other countries, they keep the money in the bank, they lose money. That money will disappear. In India, if they give, it is growing, and it is going to grow in a multifold way, which is what is we also want, they also want. That's what I said. The second phase will be how we develop a win-win situation. With that, I would like to thank both the speakers, Dinesh as well as Mishra ji, and we would ask Akram to give the closing uh,
Thank you.
remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Shekhar. Wonderful session. Actually, this is one of the most important favorite topics of mine. I'm really very happy to see the way Mr. Sir shared a lot of points. And before that, Dinesh Sir also talked. Number one, when investors invest in a country, whether it is World Bank, IMF, ADB, or any private investors, venture capitalists, anyone, they see the first thing. What is the profit that we are going to earn? Not even ADB or World Bank comes without the profit motive in mind. The first thing we have to see and show to the world that how much profit they will earn from India, which they are quite convinced. The second important topic that I also wanted to touch upon, which Mr. Sir mentioned very well, GDP or your stock market does not reflect the true sense and pain of the country. The problem is almost 60% of the or 70% of the wealth, or in fact 90% of the wealth is controlled by first, 2 to 3% of the population, which means the 97% of the population, the amount of money, resource, wealth they have is almost like just above the poverty line. So, if 1.5 or $2 per day is the poverty line, almost 70% people are around that line, which means the country or $2.5 trillion economy that we often take proud of or pride of is actually not enough. We need a redistribution of the wealth, which Sir talked very well. And this is also a problem with Bangladesh. This is also a problem with Africa and many other countries which are emerging. So is with Vietnam. The problem is the wealth accumulation is somehow is not directed to the society, which Sir also said in the Mahatma Gandhi's quote, and that should be the objective which the government should work on and do. The second is the India's biggest strength in terms of creating money and all. There are three things. One is government assets, like the land of the government and all this resources or PSUs. The second is people. The third is entrepreneurs. Now we need to value these things. People are a liability as well as an asset. If we do not skill our people, 1.5 billion, 1.35 billion population, the same people are your liability. If they are not skilled, they are not trained. Otherwise, what? They will just consume of the resources of the nation. So what we need to do, we need to skill them. Half of the population are women. We need to skill them so that their economic contribution, they are contributing in many ways, but their economic contribution goes up. Technology we cannot take lightly. 5G technology, artificial intelligence, blockchain, we cannot bring any regulation which stops any influx or promotion of the technology, whatever they are good or bad, because anything which is emerging is going to come and society will have to accept. Let us take good advantage of this. We need to create a lot of big ticket projects. Dubai is ready to invest $175 billion. India is not ready to take that because we don't have $1 billion projects. We just talk a lot, but we need to show that, yes, this is the project, invest 1 billion or 5 billion or $10 billion. So we need to, I think, work on many other topics, but these are a couple of points that I had just in mind to share before our panel. So thanking to all the two experts that we had, also Dr. Shekhar for moderating and chairing such wonderful series of programs that we are doing. Viewers, if you like our program, do subscribe, and we will be back with similar experts that we had and on a similar topic, other topic, which are directly connected with nation building. Thank you. Keep watching the Policy Times.
Thank you. Thank you so much.